Hi everyone, this is Sonia Showalter, and this is going to be a compressed video on how to do freestanding lace. So I will give you all the information that I think you need. I recommend 2 layers of the mesh type of water soluble. 1 layer can be plenty, but 2 layers supports it better. So for the best result, I recommend 2 layers. I cut these long strips out of my stabilizer in order to conserve a little bit, and I don't always do it, but I do keep these so that if I have a lot of repetitive designs I'm going to do and I don't want to deal with the little cutout squares, I will use these. I normally cut them 9 inches wide. This one happens to be a little bit wider. I'm not sure why. I must have eyeballed it or something. But 9 inches should be plenty. Now, the hoop, I recommend for you to do something to treat the edge of your hoop so that when you hoop your stabilizer, this will not be so slick and allow the stabilizer to slip back through as the machine is jiggling and stitching and shaking, and because that is one of the biggest culprits in a bad result. Not just bad stabilizing, but even if you do everything else right, if the stabilizer slips, you're not going to have a good result. So this is what I do. This is a hoop that I've used more than once for stitching my cutout corners, the designs I have that have a napkin corner in it and you cut it out. The stabilizer I use for that is this tacky water soluble, which is identical to this one, but it has a tacky side, and it comes with a paper backing to protect that tacky side, like a sticker. And I peel it away, and I stretch it onto this hoop. I do have a video on, you could go to our YouTube channel, Sonia Showalter, and look up the Pretty Acorn video, which shows the exact process from hooping to finished napkin corner. But the important thing I wanted to touch on that right now is that I use that tacky stabilizer on the hoop, and then when I'm done with a corner, I simply cut the inside of my stabilizer out and leave the edge on here. Now this one's been on here for quite a while, so it doesn't look very pretty, but it grips really, really well. And if you hear that, we have a really heavy rain going on right now, which I love, but just so you know what that noise is. Okay, so I have several layers here because it just grips a little bit better with each layer. I mean, at some point, too many layers is probably too many layers, but I have, looks like I have 3 or 4 layers on here. And once you remove the excess and this stays on the hoop for days, it becomes really solid, stuck to the hoop. But it's water soluble, so if you ever did want to take it off, you can dissolve that, and your hoop is as good as ever. Now, recently I added this center area just to give it a little extra grip in that area where it tends to have a little gap with some of the hoops, and especially because this hoop, my hoop for my multi-needle machines, has a little gap right here, and there's nothing really to hold my stabilizer right there. So I chose to add a little bit more grip right in there to hold it a little bit better. But that's not necessary. It's just little tips that I think help. So we need all the help we can get sometimes, and why not? All right, so here's how I hoop. I have my long piece of stabilizer. I clip it like this, and I hang it in my closet on hooks, just so you know, that's how I store it. So I unroll what I need and a little bit more. I will hang this off the edge of the table, and then I lean on it to hold it there for me. So it's kind of like giving me another pair of hands to hold my stabilizer where I need it while I'm hooping. So it's not sliding around on me while I'm placing it on my hoop. I slide my inner hoop under here, and I leave enough at the top just so I can pull it taut after I put the hoops together. And then I'll slide that back edge just in a little bit, and that's gripping it pretty well. And now I kind of push away from me a little bit, just a little. Push away and down. And that's pretty decent, but it's still pretty soft. It's kind of taut, but not taut enough. So here's what you need to do. This needs to be drum taut. So what I do is I turn the hoop over. That way I'm bracing the bottom hoop with my fingers while I pull down on the stabilizer. It makes it a lot easier to pull and use these fingers to grip that inner hoop so that the inner hoop does not pop out. Excuse me. And then I work my way all the way around the hoop, and you're pulling very firmly, but not enough to destroy your stabilizer. It will tear if you pull too hard. So I'm just taking up a little slack as I go. I'm not trying to do it all in one direction. And taking up a little bit of the slack in every direction will make it nice and taut. And then the last side. This makes it, when you have the excess, it makes it a little trickier. So I don't always have the excess stabilizer. I'll sometimes have smaller pieces to work with, but you can do it either way. And then you feel it. It should feel hard to the touch, especially the corners. Sometimes the corners get overlooked. Now make sure that your hoops are flush. Your outer hoop is flush with the inner hoop. I push it down and then I feel it. And it's good to go. So now it is ready for the machine. This might be overkill, but I have 5 layers of flannel on my ironing board. I have 5 layers because I didn't want to cut it all up, and it was how much I had in my stash. So I laid that on I folded it until I had the right dimensions for my ironing board. And then on top of that, I have a piece of lawn, and I have this little piece like this to show you. I do have bigger pieces I use. This is just a lightweight cotton, and this one in particular is called lawn. I use that to cover the flannel when I'm ironing lace because it's a little bit tacky when it's wet like this. All I did was rinse it and squeeze the excess water with a towel, or press the excess moisture out of it with a towel, and I came straight from the sink to here to iron. I don't wait for it to dry. It might curl just a little, but that's normal. Just make sure before you iron that the loops are rounded and not misshapen. And then I put the lawn down. I put this on it. If I put this directly on the flannel will stick to my lace because the flannel has the little fuzziness on top, so you don't want to do that. I used to use wool underneath, which works great. 2 layers of wool blend from Joann's is what I used to use. And also I used to use, once in a while, was quilt batting. Over the years, I've used all 3 of these things, and I've ultimately ended up with this setup because I had a ton of flannel. So just whatever works for you, The idea is to create loft on your ironing board so that when you press your lace, the front of the lace will bloom. It gives the threads a place to go whenever you're pressing them from the top. I found this to be so much better than using a towel, because a towel, I think, makes the embroidery, in comparison, it looks hideous. So this is my method of doing it. I've been doing this for as long as I've been digitizing, which is, gosh, almost, 15 years. All right, so I lay the embroidery face down, and then for the first couple of passes, I will use my cotton on top, because I don't want the iron to stick to my stabilizer. When it's this wet, it's a little bit tacky, so I really don't want to have the iron stick to that. I'm using a very hot iron, the hottest setting, and I'll just set it on top and kind of wiggle it a little bit. You don't want to burn anything. All right. That's kind of hot. I'll wait for it to cool just for a few seconds. I'll peel this back. I'll remove this, and you can kind of see where it leaves the impression of the lace. That's how much loft is underneath, and allows the threads to kind of displace the loftiness there, so that they have a place to go without it creating resistance. I don't want to flatten the front of my embroidery. I'm moving it to a dry spot and pressing it again like this. So the first couple of passes, I'll use the lawn as a pressing cloth as well as a barrier underneath it. I want to get my embroidery nice and hot. I don't want to burn it. I just want to get it nice and hot because I'm trying to dry it. Looks like I held that a little long. It's okay. My lawn's a little yellow. That's all right. It's not too bad. All right. It's getting drier. Now it's starting to get a little stiff. And then the last couple of passes, I'm moving it to a dry spot. I will just press directly on it because I want the back of my embroidery to be nice and flat. I also do this with the angels since they're being used as ornaments. It just makes it into a nice, wafer-thin, perfectly flat piece of lace. And it seems to set the threads so they're not so, I don't know, poofy on both sides. Here we go. And that is what ironing does. Makes it absolutely, to me, it looks beautiful. There's no warping, there's no, irregularities. It just sets everything in nicely, exactly where they're supposed to be. And it raises the front, the stitches, so that they're more dimensional than even after they come out of the machine. My embroidery usually has quite a bit of dimension, but after you iron it, it just brings it out even more. And then we're ready to embellish. That's the way I iron my lace. One thing I haven't mentioned is that sometimes I will fill a bobbin with a darker version of the top thread, and I think it gives it a tiny bit more dimension. It may not be too noticeable, but I think it's there. So for me, it's worth doing that. It's not any extra work. You could even go with black for the bottom side. Just experiment and see what looks pretty to you. So there's a piece. It's been ironed and ready to embellish. So here's what I recommend for sticking. Oh, I forgot to mention, I stitched this out twice because I wanted it to be reversible. I wanted it to look like this. It's a little bit heftier than a single layer. So if you're doing it for jewelry, I would recommend 2 pieces. It makes it that much nicer. It's just, it adds a little weight, and the back looks just as pretty as the front. So here's what I use for joining it. I recommend Fabri-Tac glue. It's a permanent fabric adhesive, and it can be used for other things too, but for fabric, this is what I use. It's gooey enough that it doesn't sink into the fibers and get them all wet. It just kind of sits on the surface, and has a nice little nozzle on it so that you can be a little more precise. And what I do is I apply this sparingly, but I make sure I go all the way around the edge, and then I also apply just a little bit in the middle here, just to keep the center part of the heart nice and secured, the front to the back. And as soon as you put this on, you're ready to join it to the other piece, because the glue sets pretty quickly. You want to make sure that your eyelets match, and at the top, and then make sure they match at the bottom. The glue sets pretty fast, but it does allow you to reposition. It gives you a little bit of time to reposition, even though it starts to grab nicely. And as soon as you're done positioning your pieces, put it down, press it for a few seconds, and you're ready to embellish. So here's what you end up with as soon as you're done with the glue. Let me cover my glue. Make sure you don't forget to put the cap back on. The glue is not cheap, but it lasts a really long time if you put the cap back on. There we go. So basically, this one already has a jump ring. There is a basic way of putting jewelry pieces together. And I'm not a jewelry maker, but this is enough for me to be able to embellish my pieces this way. I know enough about the jump rings and all that, and really it's just basics you need to know, and then you're ready to take off with your own imagination. Alright, so this piece, I took a chain and I cut the center link on the chain. Just find your center, cut off the link so that you can open the chain. And then basically when you join jewelry pieces, they're joined with these little rings called jump rings. So you would put a jump ring on the eyelet like this. And actually you would have before you close your ring, you put the jump ring on, and let me show you how you open a jump ring. So I have these that are in various sizes, and I used this size, but you can use whatever size you want. I'm going to use the bigger one so you can see it better. I'm going to open it up, and I'll show you there is a right way to open jump rings. You do not want to pull them apart. You don't want to grab it with two pliers like this and then pull it open like this. That ruins the jump ring. So you want to hold it from the sides like this, and you want to twist your ring like this. Whoops. So you twist to open, and you twist it back together to close it. So you would put this on here. You would take the end of your chain, your last link, just like I did here, and loop that onto your jump ring, and then you close your jump ring. It's that easy. It would be nicer if I had two of these kinds of little flat pliers, but it's still not hard to do. So to close it, you twist it, and then I overcorrect just a hair, because then it springs back into place. And if I overcorrect it too much, I'll just go the other direction, just a hair. There we go. If you make a mistake with a jump ring and you have to open it again, for whatever reason you forgot to put on, your chain and your bead. Let's say you wanted to hang a bead from here as well. and you forgot, so you have to open it again. If I ever have to do that, I just throw away that jump ring, because every time you open and close a jump ring, I think it weakens it. So jump rings are not expensive, so if you price them out per jump ring, it's not worth it for me to try and save a jump ring so that I save, not even a penny. I'll just throw it away because it will probably break on you. So there we go. We'll pretend we have a chain here. Okay, now what I did with this was I added a bead, and then I added my little keys, which are really the skeleton keys earrings found on my website. We have a category on the left side column that's called freestanding lace, and in parentheses it says earrings. You would find it there if you're interested in this. This is just an idea for adding to the bottom of your necklace. You can add other beads. You can do all kinds of things. It's up to your imagination, but the principle of joining things is with these jump rings. So I've added the bead, and then I added more jump rings to secure the keys. So let me show you how I did that. Whenever you add a bead, you need to have a these wires that are called oh, my mind just went blank. Pardon me, let me look it up. Oh, pins. Thank you. Gary's helping me here. Okay, so this is an eye pin. This is an I'm sorry. This is a yes, an eye pin. This is a head pin. Depending on what you're planning to do, well, that's what's going to determine which kind of pin you use. So for this bead, since I was going to hang something from the bottom, I needed to have the eye pin. Otherwise, if I use the head pin, which is like a nail or a straight pin, there's nowhere to go from there. So that would be the end of my design right here. So since I intended to hang the keys, I needed that eye pin. So here's how you use this. So here's the bead. Okay, obviously you put it right through. Now I have this, looks like pliers, but it's got rounded little points on it. So this is used for making the loop at the top of your bead, because the top needs to hang somehow. So here's what you do. You clip this off, and you do have to kind of eyeball how much you're going to need to make that loop just like this. So I'm going to eyeball right here, and you can cut off the excess later if you want. And actually, you can do it two ways. I think I'll go ahead, let me show you this way. You can cut off the excess first, or you can do it this way. Just grab it just above the bead. You want a little space to make that turn. And then depending on the size of the loop that you want, you can put this up higher on the plier, because this will make a bigger loop, or hold it down closer to the tips. That'll make a smaller loop. I kind of want this to be small, because this is pretty small. So then what you do is you can grab this. I'm trying to do this without putting it in front of me so you can see it. Okay, and then you rotate this. It's kind of hard to do far away from me, but you'll get the idea. Rotate, keep rotating, so that you can make that full circle like that. It's not perfect, but you can straighten it up a little bit after you clip it. So you can clip it first, which might make it a little easier, and start rolling from the top down, or you can turn it on the little plier like that, and then come in and clip the excess. And you want to clip this so that you can turn this into a little circle when you're done. You don't want to have a tail sticking out on the end, because you don't want things to catch on your these things to catch on your clothing. So I'm going to cut it just short of the circle. Okay, and I'm going to put my hand over it. There you go. Put my hand over it because I don't want that thing to go flying. Okay, this is very irregular. It's not the prettiest I've done. So I'm going to take my plier and straighten that up a little bit. And it is a little bit more difficult to do this. If I were right over the top of it, you wouldn't be able to see. You'd be able to see the back of my head. So I can fix it a little bit by turning this. It might take a little practice to do this. And that's not perfect, but it gives you an idea of how to make the little loop. Now I'm going to turn it back just a little to get that little S curve in there. So it's a little bit bigger than the other one, but you get the idea. So here's the other option. I'm going to do it on one of these. You could just start at the top, not at the very top of the stem, but well, when you clip it, if you don't cut it too long, then you can start at the top. I'm going to get this up close. And then you can roll it like this. Of course, it's easier to roll it without a bead underneath. And then you can do that. So, one way or the other, if you get a little loop made, that's what you're going to hang your bead from. Or that's what you're going to use to hang it onto something else. So, this is not the prettiest one I've done, but it will serve its purpose for this lesson. So I'm going to straighten it up. All right. Now, I'm going to grab a jump ring because I have to attach this to the heart somehow. So I'm going to use one of these. And remember, you twist to open. And normally these jump rings don't overlap like that at the opening. I'm not sure why these are doing that, because I need them to close end to end, not overlapped. So we will pretend, actually let me just get a bigger one so you can learn it the right way. I'm not sure why those are like that. I had not come across those yet. All right, so we'll twist this to open, put our bead on it, put our heart on it, oops, I can't see what I'm doing when I'm holding it under the camera, and then close it, and over direct it just a hair, and then oops, I know there are better tools for this, but I haven't invested in them, obviously. And when this is right in front of you, this will be much easier. I'm trying to hold this up and away from me so you can see it. And so normally this would be very nice and tightly closed. All right, the idea is you don't want it to slip off of the loops. So there's the bead attached. And when you do this, it just, when you add that jump ring, it just allows it to do the dangly thing like that. So it's not stiff and stuck to your eyelet. You actually have a little bit of a swing in it. All right, so there's the bead. Now I'm going to, and you can do this several ways. I did this by looping or using the large jump ring and putting all the keys on there. You could even put each key on a tiny little jump ring and then putting all three of the jump rings onto the bigger jump ring. The sky's the limit. You do as much as you want to. So, but I'll show you how I did that one. I'll get another one of these big jump rings. And to be honest, this metal is soft enough that you don't need another set of pliers. I wanted to show you the right way. So you open it up like that. And make sure the keys are all facing the same direction. So this is the front, the right side of the key. And just as a by the way, these keys have a little bit of black on them. I used a black ballpoint pen to antique my little keys. But they're stitched in a very similar color to the heart. But I wanted them to look antiqued, so I antiqued them. All right. So the key facing me is the correct side, the right side of the key. So this one needs to be facing me, the right side of the key. This is one of those instances where you could make a mistake and you'll have to open your jump ring again. So that's when I would possibly just throw away that jump ring and start over. Okay, so all the keys are facing in one direction. And before I close it, I can join it right here, or do what I did here. I added a second jump ring, so I think that's what I'll do. And I'm just going to hold this because it's easier for this purpose. I'll hold it and close it. There's how a jump ring should look when you close it. Nice and smooth, not going to catch on anything. I'm going to use a large jump ring again, just because it's easier to show you. I'm looking for that. There's the opening. Sometimes it's hard to see it, so I just kind of feel it with my finger. All right, I'm going to open it. I'm going to drop my keys on there. And then, before I close it, I'm going to join it to my bead. Nice and smooth. And there you go.